afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Compliance Risk. Today, we're very excited to bring on Phil and Chris from, I'm going to say it wrong again. I literally just did this 15 times before. Right?
You can do
Cavelo.
it. I believe in you.
Cavelo.
There you go.
Hello. I got it. The second it hits my tongue, I like complete blank. Cavelo. Anyways, today, we're going to talk a little bit about data and how data plays into your risk management frameworks. Chris, why don't you take a second, introduce yourself, and then Phil, you can go right after.
Great. Thank you very much, Tim. My name is Chris Shoemaker. I am the channel sales manager here at Cavelo. So I would be all of the MSP and VAR community's primary contact for all things Cavelo. I will pass it over to Phil.
Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Guerin. I'm a sales engineer, solutions architect here with Cavelo, and I work directly with all of our customers, all of our partners, and our sales team, like Chris here, supporting our customers as best as we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, we kind of noodled about this a little bit beforehand, and we talked a little bit about, the importance of being able to identify data, not just in your MSP, but also in your clients, right? As we look at any of the varying risk management frameworks that are out there, the compliance frameworks that are out there, there's a big, push for inventory, right? And data and hardware and all these different controls that are around. What is it that we're supposed to protect? Where is it? And how do we protect it, right? And so, there are a few tools in this space. I really like what Cavelo's doing here. But, tell me a little bit more about kind of where you came from, how you got here, and what you see in with your tool set and how it helps support the community in compliance and risk and management of that stuff.
Yeah, great. I'll start, and maybe Phil, you can jump in and help fill some holes in. But so the collective management and dev team at Cavelo has been in the IT security game for quite a long time. Phil can explain a little bit more in some detail the companies that they came from. But we'd actually created another tool that is part of the legs of the stool of what Cavelo's doing now, and had sold that through to a large MDR provider in North America that you guys might have heard of. That was a number of years ago now. And so we had a real footing in what is the technology base that Cavelo is today. But what we noticed was people were kind of forgetting the front of the house, if you will, in an IT security plan. They were always pulling tool sets off the shelf and purchasing block and tackle tools. And effectively deploying those block and tackle tools, which granted you need, that's table stakes. You got to have that castle wall and multi-layered approach. But they were forgetting about what they were trying to protect. They were just putting these tools out there, deploying them blindly, and really forgetting what's at the front, what's important. It's really the data, which is every business's intellectual property. And if you don't know what it is, where it lives, how at risk it is, and what the organization might be liable for should there be a leak or breach, how do you really deploy those block and tackle tools effectively? So that's kind of where we decided to focus, and that is get a handle on the data in any environment. And from an MSP's perspective, when using a platform like ours that focuses on the data, you can kind of look like magicians to your customers, because they've never been able to get that kind of visibility and insight about where their important stuff is and how at risk it is, right? That alone makes the MSP stand a head and shoulder above everybody else that they've ever endeavored to work with before.
Yeah, I like the block and tackle reference because, as we said in the beginning, one of the things I like to do is teach people to fish or fish for them. So I love the block and tackle reference. So Phil, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I can add a few things to that. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tim. So yeah, to take a big step back, a lot of the company comes from a mixture of different companies, as Chris mentioned. I started my career principally at a company called Sandvine. We're in the DPI or the deep packet inspection space, really before that was a coined term, right? You've got DPI running in all modern switches and firewalls nowadays. Back then, it was a novel concept. It was like, what do you mean? I can look at packets and I can see what's in there and I can establish flows and I can start taking direction and management around that. That was one of the first forays for me personally and the company in general into a network protection level. So right down to the data, right down to the packets coming in at ISPs, gaining visibility on that, understanding who's using it, start layering controls around the flow of that. Right. And then a lot of the original folks from there went off and started a company called Decentire, getting into the MDR space, arguably before MDR was a coined term. So again, being a backstop and a supporting agency to help other organizations who are just at their end of scale, right? They don't have the resources to be able to stand on top of analyzing all that data and taking action on it. So they need help, right? They need a partner, they need technology to help facilitate that. That's kind of one of the origins of how MDR was born, or at least from my perspective in terms of MDR being born. A few of us decided to come back together in our previous endeavor, got more into the network space from a vulnerability perspective, as opposed to a raw packet data perspective. And from an appliance, a network, and an agent-based level, started really drilling down closer into, well, why are we protecting networks? We're protecting the elements within those networks, right? So getting into vulnerability scanning, now we're taking a step closer to protecting the elements within those networks.
Nice.
As we move forward through time, we keep kind of asking ourselves that same question. Well, why are we protecting the networks? It's because of the systems. Why are we protecting the systems? Well, it's all because of the data, right? Now, historically, it's been a challenge to be able to pragmatically wrap your head around, well, what is all the data within my organization? That's a monumental, mountainous type of an ask. So frankly, we just haven't done it, right? Like I've been a part of teams running patch management. I've been running teams doing threat hunting. You do the best that you can with the information that you have and the access to data that you have.
Right.
Cavelo's perspective was, well, we care about the data, right? So let's take a stab at actually bringing an awareness of what data we have, where the data is, and to Chris's point, where is that data at risk of a breach actually occurring? Right. So again, to Chris's point, this doesn't mean we can stop protecting at the edge, right? We still need our castle guard. The nature of the world has changed, right? The principal means of a data breach or data exfiltration in the past had been an organization or human beings intentionally attacking a perimeter of an organization, working their way through the system as needed, escalating and exploiting various vulnerabilities. Maybe they find some data, maybe they don't. When they find it, they find a way to exfiltrate it, they move on to the next and they continue to do so.
Right.
The reality today, that all is still happening, but now this is not human being directed. There's just automation frameworks running constantly.
Yeah.
If anybody has put a web server on the internet with a public IP address on it and have looked at the log files within 20 minutes of deployment, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody knew that was there. No one knew that you were going to deploy that. And yet a small army of bots have found you and are knocking at that door continuously.
It's interesting that you say that, because I received kind of an ominous email a week or so ago from Divvy, right? So Divvy's an organization kind of working through bug bounties and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I received an email from them with, hey, just want to let you know, we've discovered this DNS entry on one of your domains. And I was like, what? And so I had some conversation, email back and forth with them. And yes, they scan the entirety of the internet, as they say, and they look for potential things that might be a little suspect. Lo and behold, I created a record to point to one of my Azure services that only I know about, only I'm using, only I'm dealing with. And yeah, it was this little static HTML web page. I was playing with some stuff a while back that I'd forgotten about. But yeah, like you said, their bot found it because of what they're doing in protecting like the internet, as they say. Hey, just want to let you know, hostmaster@yourdomain.com, we found this thing, you probably want to do something about it. So you're right. It's all about the data. It's all about these bots doing this automation doing this. Like, 10 years ago, I would have to hunt for a Word document looking for a thing. And now it's just kind of, well, Cavelo can do that for me. So yeah, it is. It's, you know, I mean, data is the commodity, right? It's, you know, ransomware. Like, I encrypted your data, pay me money to get it back. You know, you see all the big tech companies like protecting my privacy, protecting my data. I mean, privacy law, like Connecticut just came out with their own data privacy protection, and they're just, data is the commodity, right? So for us as IT service professionals, MSPs, we kind of need to know where that stuff is. We kind of need to know how to classify that stuff. We kind of need to figure out the risk of that stuff, right? And I've been using your platform for a while now, running it on one of my machines. I have that machine that has purposely, you know, got information on it for this reason, right? And so, you know, maybe Chris or Phil, you have some slides you want to share. You kind of want to get into that a little bit, but it was really fascinating. Like, I have 300,000 email addresses sitting on files on my machine on purpose, and they're fictitious because I wanted to test the platform. But the fact that it was able to find all of those pieces of data across different drives and different pieces in my test platform, of course, right? So Chris, Phil, I'm not sure, do you have some slides you want to share and some stuff you want to just dive right into here?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think what I'm going to do is just share a handful of slides just to talk over them. I'm not going to kill anybody by PowerPoint, but it is nice to talk over some points, just sort of drive some things home. I'll set that up, and then I'm going to pass the ball to Phil, who's going to do most of the driving today and give the nickel tour of the user interface and flush out exactly what we're trying to accomplish with the platform and the challenges we're trying to solve for. So bear with me while I share.
Sure. Wait, does it bear with you? Kidding.
All right. One sec. I got some Zoom permission issues. Bear with me.
Are you on an Apple device?
I am.
That's why you need to give permission. We should have done that in the green room.
Oh, yeah.
Totally forgot.
Yep. So I'm stuck here without rebooting Zoom, unfortunately.
All right. You want to, go ahead and email that over while we do a little, fill in the blanks. And
yeah, sure. You can share it.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
I can jump in on something here while you guys sort that out.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be great.
Tim, you brought up a great point about like domain awareness. And one of the big things on my radar is things like subdomain hijacking, for example.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
You own a domain somewhere, you don't own all the potential subdomains to that. All of a sudden someone comes in, they take one or they spoof one. Now, why do they do that, right? That's a principal tenet of a phishing campaign or a spear phishing campaign if they're directing in somewhere. This segues well from the thought of protecting yourself at the perimeter, right? Now, the last 2 years, 85% of all data breaches have been the result of a human being making a mistake, as opposed to someone attacking you at your edge and exfiltrating from the inside out. Now, the reality is every single human being within the organization is a potential risk to the organization, because all they need to do is click on the wrong link on the wrong day. That action takes advantage of a misconfigured system or an unpatched vulnerability, which gives the ability for anyone in the organization to open up a barn-sized door to walk those people directly in to where that sensitive data is, as opposed to making them do the work on infiltrating and exfiltrating.
Yep.
Right? You're literally opening it in like a concierge service and saying, here you go, please walk out with the data that you now have.
Yeah.
Right? So it's more important than ever, not only to understand where your data is, what your data is, what that data liability looks like, but more importantly, all of that internal risk and all of those points of access internally to get to that data and really be preventative, right? Really start engaging with proactive and continuous data hygiene. That way, not the if, but the when an incident happens at some degree, you can sleep surely, knowing that you've minimized and mitigated any of those downstream impacts, again, when they happen, right? We all have a limited sense of time, we have a limited sense of investment, and all of our focuses are pulled in a million different directions on any given day. We're never going to get to a point where we have zero liability and zero vulnerabilities. At that point, it just means we're not running a business and we don't have any technology deployed within it.
Right. I keep saying, let's go back to abacus and, tablet and chalk. It's the only way we might consider staying safe, maybe. But yeah, you do make some valid points about, what good is having a car with the windows rolled up and the doors locked if it's a convertible in the middle of a dangerous area. Right? Or yeah. So Chris, I haven't received your slides. Why don't we kind of wing our way through it? If you want to talk a little bit about what might be on there, I'm going to close my window so that you're not listening to my neighbors, whatever he's doing out there.
Oh, good. Yeah, I did send it, so it should be on its way to you. Right. But in any case, that's fine. Really, our point is that sensitive data is everywhere, right? And really, people don't have an idea about what's going on with their data sprawl. They don't know whether or not data is moving offside in terms of their data policies. And if they had some visibility to that, they might make better decisions about how to spend their time and what they should do in their day-to-day remediation. A business is always evolving, and that organization should evolve with it in relation to how they look at data and IT security, right? What we're trying to do here is get a focus on that data to drive intelligent insights, which lead to proactive strategies, which ultimately equal predictable and desirable outcomes, which everybody is looking for, right? So Cavelo is really a platform to bring certain functionalities together that have to do with data discovery, data classification, the tracking and policies about how that data can move, easy reporting on what's going on, and how at risk the data that's found is, and what the potential liability of having a leak or breach is for that organization in relation to the now visible data in their environment, right? So that they can make some smart decisions around things. So, oh, here we go.
That's the success of the internet. Hey, look, I got your data.
Yeah, exactly right. Maybe pop down to slide 4, if you could, please, Tim. Awesome. So with that said, really, Cavelo is a platform that brings all these things together under one roof. And we really believe in the 1 + 1 = 3 strategy, that having these various informational slices layered on top of each other brings to the table, right? It is greater than the sum of its parts. And because of our platform being somewhat new and hard to classify, because we're bringing many things together, Gartner has made the decision to create a new category called CASM. Fancy acronym, but it stands for
acronyms in the GRC compliance space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So cyber asset attack surface management. But to distill that, it basically means getting visibility to make smart decisions in order to reduce the potential footprint that somebody can cause harm to you. And that is kind of what we're bringing together. If you could flip to 5, that'd be great. Yeah. Awesome. So just to summarize, automated data discovery by PII type, automated data classification by PII type, risk analysis via vulnerability scanning by endpoint, automated software inventorying so that we can identify missing software on a whitelist that has been created, so that, as a for instance, if there is deployed endpoints which for some reason haven't had their AV software installed, that's a problem. You want to identify that. Or if there are endpoints that have rogue software installed, that's a problem. You want to identify that. So that's all baked into our platform. And then a liability assessment based on the IBM cost of breach research. So this is important for MSPs, because MSPs have conversations with the C-levels at their clients, and they oftentimes bump their heads against those sea levels and hit the ceiling because there is an understanding differential. We all sort of talk technology, they talk dollars. So we baked into the solution an ability for MSPs in the reporting structure of the platform to say, hey, this is how liable you are, Mr. C-level, so that they can understand what we're really trying to talk about. It's an important point. This was based on feedback provided by our partner community.
Yeah, so a couple of points, right? So, your data discovery by PII type, right? This is one of the things that, in conversations with Cavelo, for me, like, sure, social security number, address, the standard PII types that we're all used to serving. I found intriguing that versus others in the space that I've looked at is we have a lot of student level data. That student level data and the structure of that data is in 100 different formats. I need to know where that is because of data sharing agreements. I mean, I can know where it is and I'm protecting it, but I haven't put some of because of the data sharing agreements that we have in place. And so being able to work with your team and your development team as time and feature requests allow, being able to say, hey, I need a thing to search for this type of string or this type of data. During your process, and now I can start looking automated classification of that data, like why does the selling secretary have the entire student data list? That.
Yeah, exactly right. And what we're really striving for, and what everybody should be striving for, is insights to drive focused, proactive remediation tasks, right? Yielding the best use of everybody's time to secure the environment. It's really that simple.
Yeah. And then the last piece that you mentioned about the liability assessment based on that, right? So as IT service professionals, one of the things that we do with our clients is explain to them what their risk is and what cost of breach is. Right? A lot of us kind of walk our clients through that process, like, hey, you have 10 records, it's going to cost you this much when you are breached, not need to share the conversation to when. Right, so baking that into part of your platform kind of alleviates and makes our quarterly business reviews better, makes our data sets and understanding, like it just is, helps us to
and that's really it from a summary standpoint. I think we should probably back out of the slides and hand the ball to Phil, and he can share.
Yeah, and there's a couple of questions in chat too. Before I get too far down the road, I'm assuming that's the let's get started part, right? So let me stop sharing and you can start. But before we go too far, let me grab that real quick. So
why don't we let Phil do his thing, and I can help answer questions in the chat while he's doing that.
There we go.
Okay, sounds good. Let me pop my screen open here. Can everyone see my screen with my mouse moving around?
Yep.
And just to confirm, we see the Cavelo dashboard and 2 tabs, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Stop putting a nice big box around it so I can't tell what screen's being shared. Fortunately, I picked the right monitor.
You did.
Okay, great. So I'm going to prefix this from a technical perspective. So everything that I'm going to walk through here is facilitated with a simple software endpoint agent and our secure cloud infrastructure. So there's no on-premise appliances, there's no on-prem databases or clusters to have to worry about managing from an operational standpoint. Nothing to even worry about for data egress, custom porting rules, or anything like that. Everything is egress over 443 and TLS. So it is a simple deployment. You can deploy the agents one-off. You can use your remote management tool to push across the network and recall across the network as you so please. Everything else is driven from our simple web-based dashboard and then coordinated with our secure infrastructure. So I'm going to start with the data. All right, the data is the most important. The data is the absolute focus, and it is the core IP to the Cavelo platform. Where our current focus is today is on what we refer to as the corporate hybrid environment. So all of the workstations that all of your users and employees are using to engage with your organizational data sets, your servers, your laptops, your desktops, those could be physical units sitting on a desk. Those could be virtual, running in your VMware cluster, Azure, AWS on EC2, anything running Windows, Linux, or Mac, we have you covered from that perspective. So as an example, on the endpoint perspective, I'll click into one of the servers under test here. We bring all of the inventory together under one pane of glass for high-level reporting and for queries and questions. And as a part of bringing that inventory together, we are classifying all of the known sensitive data types. So the principal focus on that is the PII types, the personally identifiable information, as defined by the NIST data privacy framework, things like credit card numbers, passport numbers, driver's license numbers, et cetera, et cetera. And to Chris's point, we also support custom searches. So if you're looking for someone's specific email address, if you're looking for references to a special project, if you're doing something like a high-level freedom of information request or right to be forgotten request, and you need to track down where those details are, we facilitate that as well.
You know, can I pause you there?
Certainly.
Can I pause you there for a second?
Yes, please.
So while you know, be it Google and Microsoft or whatever, like DLP, right? Litigation Goal, right? It just made me think of like, not that we would use your entire platform on a litigation hold, but during the discovery process, right? It might be a way for us to, another additional way for us to be able to help. Like, so what I'm trying to make is that, hey, getting your legal and law firm clients on this platform, and then getting them to help their clients with data discovery, right? So again, it's two or three pieces down the road, but not only are you providing that service of protecting your legal client, but you're also giving them some way to possibly discover information.
Yeah, that's correct, Tim. Yeah, in the legal space, something that's big is a concept called e-discovery. Now, that's mostly around searching for precedent and existing information around known cases to best set up those people to do their best possible job, right? This is a way to like basically expand that concept of e-discovery across any organization and any set of data. Now, we focus principally on unstructured data, which is a bit of a gap in the market today. So anything that's been downloaded and being used on those endpoints. And as well, we don't just focus on the endpoint level. We punch up to cover where most of the organization's data today is being stored, siloed, and shared. So not just those file servers and file shares, again, whether they're on premise or they're in the cloud, but we're also looking at your various cloud services like Office 365 and G Suite, for example. Now we're pulling in people's email contents, the corporate SharePoints, the user OneDrives, the equivalent services in the G Suite, just so I don't bullet point everyone to death here. So where is all that information principally stored? Where is it being reviewed? Where is it being actioned on? And how is it being distributed and consumed across the organization? This is where we punch well out of the box today.
Endpoints, but SaaS apps that we have insight into as well.
That's correct.
Perfect.
We're not limited to these data connectors. Part of the way that we work, it is common practice for us to add new data source connectors and new classification types that will just work out of the box simply for any new customers that we onboard. As well, we work diligently with our existing customers to make sure that they are continuing to get access to the data that they need access to, gain those insights, understand where that information is at risk as they continue to adopt new cloud services, for example.
Nice.
That's actually how our iManage connector, for example, came into fruition. We started working with members of the legal space. iManage is a go-to best of breed cloud document store that's adopted well in the legal space. Common problem is once you move your sensitive data into a third-party service, it's very easy to lose track of exactly what's there, unless that service is also providing you insights back. So what we've done is we wrote a data connector. It integrates to that third-party service. Now, those consuming it and leveraging that third party have the benefit of understanding not only the sensitive data that they're putting in there, but the liability that they may be exposing to themselves by trusting that third party.
Mhm.
I'll get into this in my example, but we have the ability to do external vulnerability scans, which also allows you to point at that instance, your particular instance of that third-party cloud service. Now you not only understand the data and the liability that you're trusting with that third-party vendor, you also understand the diligence that they're going to keep that instance and your data protected.
So you just, in my head, all right, so data discovery, all that great stuff. Oh, wait, vulnerability scanning on the endpoints and in the cloud. Oh, now you just took a piece of another tool that I might be paying for and do part of it in here as well, right?
You got it.
Yeah, so that's a good pivot point.
So now I've like combined tools into one. Keep going.
So nothing mind-blowing here. The special sauce here is the integration of the data sets, right? So if you're familiar, and I'm sure many people here are familiar with products like Rapid7 or Qualys or Nessus, Tenable, for example, we're scanning for the same CVE vulnerabilities. We're producing those results against the same CVSS scoring system from the NIST cybersecurity framework. And we're providing the same follow-up information in terms of other applicable CVEs related and all the requisite follow-up information to best understand, mitigate, and ideally resolve those vulnerabilities at the endpoint level and throughout the network.
Nice.
Again, we do this from a simple software-based solution. Right now, the benefit of having the agent deployed to facilitate the data discovery and data classification is now you're running an effective full credentialed vulnerability assessment on that endpoint. We're not limited to that. Anywhere where the agent is not installed or cannot be installed, so your printers, your switches, your VoIP telephones, for example, you can use a single agent deployed to one of those sites that have access to those available subnets. In conjunction with our secure infrastructure, you're able to sweep and scan all available subnets for anything on the network, whether it has the agent or not, from a credentialed or a non-credentialed standpoint, and bring all of those vulnerability risks into the fold as well. And as I mentioned, using only the cloud infrastructure, this is where you can scan anything with a public IP address. So perhaps that's your instance of a third-party vendor service. Perhaps that's everything in your DMZ or your edge node firewalls, for example. You effectively get what would be represented as an ongoing penetration test from a vulnerability perspective.
Nice.
We give you the recipes of exactly how those vulnerabilities would be exploited by, frankly, any 10-year-old out there with a keyboard. The only thing that we stop short on is actually exploiting the vulnerability and planting a flag on your system.
Nice.
Now, in addition to the endpoints, network, and external vulnerabilities, we are also continuously scanning for configuration vulnerabilities. So this takes the shape of looking for adherence at the endpoint level for the CIS benchmark controls. Simply put, what are the table stakes, simple things that I can do to best harden my endpoints to make it easier for my users to use those systems securely, make it a bit more difficult for them to be used insecurely.
Gotcha.
Things like password complexity rules, account lockout rules. If I try to log in 5 or 6 times, is that going to shut me out? Or is that automated botnet going to keep knocking at that door until someone finally gives in and lets me in? Now, as I mentioned, one of the big punching points for Cavelo here is multi-dimensioning the data sets that we bring together. You can go to market today, you can find some tools that are going to do data discovery, vulnerability assessment, and software management. However, our perspective is that questions from one data set often beg answers from the other. And it's a rather cumbersome task to have to do all the stitching and reporting behind the scenes together just to produce those insights. So we don't do it, right? We do it where we need to, but we don't do it where we have the opportunity to do so. So as an example here, all those same endpoints that I showed you on the data discovery and classification page, where we're finding all that sensitive data, they're dispersed across this heat map in these 2 core planes. So as the groups move to the right, you're getting higher in your data liability, right? More credit card numbers, more passport numbers, more driver's license numbers. As those groups move up, you're getting higher in unmet configuration recommendations and unpatched vulnerabilities. So at a glance, on a continuous basis, what are my 2, 5, 10 endpoints that have the highest amount of my data liability and the least amount of protection currently afforded to them today? Now, the reason why Cavelo feels this is important is that data liability is used as a weighting process to the priority flow of simply what systems I'm going to patch on any given day or week. Right? I could have a couple 7s or 8s from the CVSS score perspective on the endpoint that has the principal amount of data liability in my organization. And I could have 20 10s distributed across other machines that have no real data to be concerned about, no real impact on the rest of the network to be concerned about. I don't want to spend days, weeks, and months patching systems that I don't really need to be patching under focus before I get to the point where I'm actually protecting the organization's liability. So use that data liability as a weight to make sure that you're structuring your priority flow on simple patch management as effectively as you can be. Right? I like to joke, we don't win points for patching vulnerabilities, we win points for keeping the organization safe. And because it's been historically difficult to bring the data conversation into the fold, we've done the best that we can, right? We make the best decisions we can with the information that we have. And the best information we've had up until this point is a master list of vulnerabilities throughout the network. My 10s, my 9s, my 8s, and we all execute in that priority flow because that's the right thing to do when you're working from that data. With Cavelo, we can help augment that and shine a light through where you have gaps in that process. Now, on demand or scheduled daily, weekly, monthly, you can take a snapshot of all the pertinent information in that system. Meaning you can demonstrate with receipts, where is all of my sensitive data on my servers, on my cloud services, on my laptops? What are all the different sensitive data types that I'm housing, that I'm responsible for managing within my organization, whether they should be there or not?
I see one on screen that, as part of our peer group, one of the things that we've been kind of pulling back, bringing back to the forefront is CMMC 800-171 defense contractors. And I see right near where your mouse is, a little red line that says CUI or CUI, right? And
that's right.
As we progress in MSPs, helping our clients identify where is your CUI. I talk to a lot of defense contractors, and because government space is our thing, most of them don't know where all of their data is and who has access to it. So this is, kind of goes back to what I was saying before. Hey, look, we can help you find where your CUI is amongst all the other stuff, but we can help you find that with, a large nominal, hourly, I'm kidding. We can help you find that. The tool sets that we have available can help you identify that. Sure, we can put sensitivity labels inside of Word documents and blah, 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 blah. But, if your end users aren't handling their data appropriately and marking them appropriately, most CUI documents that are supposed to come from the federal government should be marked CUI, and you can help us find it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, we actually have a few customers, and I was talking to one very recently where we simply automate away the complexity of managing the awareness of their CUI documents, right? We got some people in the logistics and manufacturing spaces that have these CMMC requirements, and nobody makes money tracking where their documents live. No one makes money having to sit down and talk to that auditor and dance through the hoops that they have to dance through to prove to them that they know where it is. It's a painful process that they just want to go away, frankly. Right now, I'm kind of paraphrasing the quote a little bit here, but for those customers, it's as simple as deploying that agent, focusing in the reports on simply looking at CUI. The lead stakeholders in those environments get a weekly report sent to their email, and it shows them where all of their CUI documents are across their organization, sitting in their email, sitting in their SharePoint, sitting in their OneDrive, dispersed all across their network, even down to the salespeople on the road and the people working at home on their kitchen tables.
So for us as MSPs, when we talk about doing an assessment based on a framework like scope and boundary, right? So when an organization is like, I want everything, so we scan everything and we tell them everything, and they see, well, you know what? These things will actually never do touch it. So we can narrow the scope if need be, right? I mean, ideally, we want to be scanning everything because data leakage happens, right?
And that's another good point, Tim. So another thing that this report gets used for on a regular basis is satisfying audit and DDQ questions from the insurance community and from the general customer and user community in general, right? If I'm doing business with you, if I'm working with you and sharing data, how do you know where all of your data is? How do you understand the liability of the data you're working with? How do you understand the risk of a breach of exposure of that data? Generating this report supplies all of that evidence at the click of a button.
Did you pull this report from my tenant? Kidding. I know it's a test platform.
Yeah, no, this is a real report from a real system, from real endpoints running real data. We have permission to demo from this, obviously, but this is as real world as we're going to get. And I would argue that this is just as representative, maybe less so on the volume side of things, but in the generic spread, it's very common to see data all over the place. It's very common to see a very disparate set of risk all over the place. And it often challenges our own gut instincts in terms of what data is living where, even what data is in the environment in general. We engage with a lot of people that, you know, there's a policy of we don't collect this type of data from these folks. And if we ever do, there's a policy to follow through. And then we kind of go in, run a POC and a trial, and well, we discover a lot of things that maybe don't line up well with those policy controls and what people have kind of signed off on those pieces of paper. It kind of shines a light a little bit and a reinforcement of maybe we need some technology to help backstop what people are signing up to make sure that they're actually following through on that. Now, how do you help realize that, right? It's great to have high-level reports. It's great to have an outlier focus. It's great to get some new weights in terms of my decision-making, but how do I make use of that, right? So we're not only focused at the top end insurance and requirements reporting level, we also make all this information available for the operators in the environment to do their jobs effectively. And again, how do we do that? Well, you need to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, and you need to be able to focus in the right order of things, right? We all take one step at a time. As much as we want to believe we can kind of click our heels together and solve all of these problems over the weekend, because we all know there's an unlimited amount of time between Friday and Sunday. So what are the types of PII that traditionally are not going to cost us from a liability perspective versus what are the types that are? Based on my data liability, what are my outliers, right? What are my outlying sources of data? Servers, email inboxes, et cetera. And what's the spread of the data that contributes to that liability score? Now, I haven't mentioned, and I should mention, these dollar signs that you see throughout the reports in the dashboard. This is not Cavelo creating an inflammatory number to prod a false sense of action. This is all baseline in IBM's cost of breach research. Simply stated there, IBM is a research team. They take a sampling of organizations in each previous year who have had a cybersecurity incident, and they run that through. So who did it happen to? What industry do they work in? What data was involved, most importantly? And at the end of the day, when the dust finally settles, what did it cost that organization from a cybersecurity insurance perspective, an operational downtime perspective, anything to do with customer churn, reputation, or loss? And all the miscellaneous things that the legal team has to get involved with just due to the nature of the rest of those concerns. And then they do the Herculean effort of distilling that down to a unit cost per PII. So more simply put, the larger amount of sensitive data you have within the environment, the larger potential liability that you face. We baseline those metrics in that best available research. And better yet, we actually expose all of that configuration to the users so that way they can adjust those weights and change that to dial that in to best follow their own legal team's guidance, for example. So if you're doing intellectual property searches, your own e-discovery level searches, you know, what are those documents or CAD diagrams, et cetera, that are going to cost you if they leak that may not cost another organization, for example. Now, even better, so I got a point of focus. I understand why that's my point of focus. Well, do I need to do something about this or do I not? Why do I have all of those social insurance numbers? Now, social insurance number is just the Canadian equivalent of a social security number for the mixed demographics that may be listening. So what I'm going to bring up next here is our query engine. So not only is all of this information summarized on demand or summarized in the scheduled report, it's also available at your fingertips, sitting at your desk to just pose questions to. So what do I mean by that? A couple quick examples. I can ask, where's all the credit card information across my organization? I click a filter, I click a button, I already have results. Now, the answer to that question in this case is not one that I want, right? The answer is it's a little bit everywhere. I've got credit card data on laptops. I've got it in cloud document services. I've got it sitting on a server. I've got it throughout my Google Workspace. And if I click through the results, I'm certainly to find it sitting in people's inboxes, sitting in people's OneDrives, for example. Now, more specifically, what is that big purple bar of a $500,000 liability trying to tell me? So let's focus on that particular case. Again, a couple filters, click a button, I've got results. So the context behind those metrics, I've got a few dozen files, each of which have dozens or hundreds of social insurance numbers, social security numbers. And from the file system data that we collect, it's inherent that this is a large store of employee and unionized data. So I've got sensitive HR data sitting on this endpoint. Now, I certainly need to keep this data, or at least some of it, whatever is within my data retention policies. So that's a good lens right there. How much of this do I need to keep? How much of this can I safely get rid of or offload into an archive somewhere to lower my liability, making me rest a little bit easier at night? That's the easy task. The harder task is actually stewarding the job, right? So let's say that this is all within my data retention policies. Now I need to consider my data control policies. Where is this data? If this host is a part of my HR cluster, good. I've got sensitive HR data sitting on an HR system. This is the value of being able to pivot to the protection data stream. Am I doing the right thing from an endpoint hardening perspective when it comes to this endpoint? Do I have this in the right spot of my priority list for my patch management? Right? I know in this case, in this example, that I don't. Right? This was the host that was sitting in the top right-hand corner of that heat map, most amount of data liability, least amount of protection currently offered to it. That is a signal that the priority for this endpoint needs to change. It needs to be increased. I should be patching this week, not this month or next quarter.
So cognizant of the time, right? I mean, I can go a little longer, which is fine, but cognizant of the time, right? So, a lot of what I'm seeing here is, I mean, obviously, because I'm using the platform is great, being able to identify where the data is, identifying it down to the endpoint, or as you said, the cluster, like, does this data belong to the endpoint that it should be? Like, I think that's all key and important, right? You talked and touched a little bit about vulnerability management, right? So I'm assuming there's some vulnerability scanning that we already talked about in here to be able to look at, I need to take care of these high value assets with these critical or high risk CVEs as part of my vulnerability management plan, and remediating those things because they're highly valuable and there's a lot of data there. I think that's great. And what other pieces, sort of real quick that you might be able to touch on and highlight here? Tell me about the policies pieces, for example.
Great question, Tim. And that's a perfect spot for me to wrap up as well. So using that same example, let's say all that sensitive HR data was not found on one of your HR systems. Let's say it was found on, I'm not picking on anyone specifically, but a desktop in your marketing department. Now we have a couple problems. We have a very clear data privacy problem because the marketing team should not have access to that sensitive HR data. That is HR eyes only. That is an internal privacy problem. So that's one problem right there. That's also a cybersecurity problem, right? It stands to reason in most organizations that your HR and your finance systems and your engineering systems are going to be a higher class when it comes to what you need to be protecting and why, as opposed to your marketing department, for example. It all needs to be protected, but the priority order is askew there, given the data that's there. Most of the time, it's another human being level mistake. Someone copied the wrong data to the wrong share folder, an automated process synced it, or curious minds are clicking away. It doesn't really matter. The reality is that data is transitory and it will find a way to move if there is any means possible to move it, right? So this is an example where you can run a detailed report on that, get that sent off, aggregate that sensitive data back into the right systems. And we have a policy engine and an automated alerting framework that allows you to backstop those data hygiene realities as you find them. So I can set up a policy that says, anytime I find that data on that system again moving forward, send me an email, let that email create a ticket. Now I've got a near real-time alert of a known data control violation, and I have a call to action ready to go. I'm not going to wait until next quarter or next half to do my regular top-down assessment. I've already done that. I've already identified the pain points. I don't want to do it again. I want the system to work for me and prompt me back into action. Our policy engine has visibility to every part of our data model. So if you want to look at things like, tell me when the data vulnerability landscape changes on my CFO's machine. Tell me if it changes on my CEO's machine, but maybe only if there's certain copies of certain documents on it, et cetera, et cetera.
Nice. So kind of in summary, I can already tell I can replace a couple of my tools because you're doing a couple of overlap pieces. So I might have some cost savings over here, but I'm also gaining other beneficial things by understanding where the risk is, understanding where that data is, who has access to the data, classification, all the great stuff that you just talked about. I'm not going to get into the pricing conversation as part of this webinar. For those of you that are in my peer group, when we meet next, generally on Thursdays at 3, we will discuss and have pricing conversations. I can bring in either Chris or Phil around that specifically for our members. Obviously, you can go to their website. I had a slide here from you all. Hold on, let me share that slide, right? Where to get started. Yes, I'm stealing your screen share.
That's okay. I can stop that.
Nope, I stole it. So where do you go? Cavelo.com/partners to learn more. Chris, do you want to wrap us up here on kind of bringing us back home?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, certainly. Cavelo.com/partners. That's exactly right. If you want to learn more about how to become a partner, we like to get in down and dirty with our customers and our partners to help them get to the win. We're easy to deal with. Our partner portal couldn't be simpler. I made sure of it. We want you to get in and out in a minute for deal regs and to get marketing support documentation to support your sales efforts. We really want to do great things and bring the power of the data insights that can come from our platform to our MSP community in order for them to look like magicians for their customers.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you both taking the time here. We're kind of coming up in the last couple of minutes. Let me just pop over to the chat window and make sure I didn't miss any questions. David or Shri or Jason, do either of you want to come on and ask any questions before we kind of end the day here? Yes, no, maybe so. I can allow you to talk, and I can allow you to talk, and I can allow you to talk. Yay! Now you can all talk if you'd like, and we'll spend a minute or 2 or 3 in any Q&A that you might want to ask while we have a captive audience here. Go ahead, Shri. You might be on mute.
Looks like everybody is good.
Yeah. And
according to the chat.
Yeah. Looks like David's good. Tree's good. All right. Well, then let me just bring us home here and hit it. I am Tim Golden. Obviously, Chris and Phil from Cavelo here today discussing where is your data and how can we help you find it. Coming up next in 2 weeks from now will be a little talk on, I'm going to bring back the getting your house in order. We did that this past summer. I think it's time that we do it again. One of the very first controls within the CIS framework is where is your data and how do we find it? And this is one method for us to be able to help find it. So stay tuned, keep an eye out for getting your house in order. That'll be coming out in the next week or 2. And We have another special guest coming up with us. Those of you that maybe know Jennifer Bleem from MSP Sales Revolution, she will be discussing 5 golden ways to sell cybersecurity. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much. Guess I'm supposed to say like, share, subscribe, kind of all that other social stuff, but whatever, you all know how to do that anyway. So this is Tim Golden from Compliance Risk, and I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you very much.